Hello, welcome back to the United Mates Football Podcast. Today, as ever, I'm joined by my co-host Joe, and our good friend John is with us too. We also have a special guest on the call whose line of work is very crucial when it comes to the evolution and preservation of the footballing ecosystem, so to speak. But now that I've tried to sound smart and failed, Joe, in just a minute or so, will be giving him a much less cryptic introduction. Before we do get to them, though, John, it's good to have you back on the pod with us. How have you been doing?
Yeah, good, good. I've been, I suppose it's kind of now the normal lockdown routine where you go for a walk, well, do your work from home, go for a walk, watch the football, go to bed, and then just do it over and over again until until it ends. So that's been my recent experience. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And I guess as long as this lockdown is going to continue, at least there is plenty of football for us all to watch. Joe, how are you?
Hello, Kai. Yep, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, my routine is more or less exactly the same as John's, as I'm sure it is of most of the people living in the UK at present. But we are, of course, fortunate to be joined today by a really fantastic guest. So a big welcome to the show to Luke, or if you're on Twitter, aka Griffin Football. Luke is a scout for Cheltenham Town Football Club, and he's also the co-founder of Target Scouting, which is a website that focuses on the progress of young footballers from around the world. And you could even hear him on his own podcast, which is the Anti-Football Podcast. And finally, much like all the best people in the world, Luke is a Spurs fan. So obviously I'm very happy about that. Luke, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm at the moment, I'm very much the same story of stuck indoors and a walk being the highlight of my day.
Yeah, I never thought I'd enjoy a walk as much, but even they're starting to get a bit boring now. But on to more exciting stuff. Now, Luke, we start every episode on the United Mates Football Podcast with an icebreaker question to our guests. So, as we can see actually right now, you're sporting a rather impressive beard, I must say. But what I would like to know, Luke, is who is your favourite bearded footballer?
That's tough. I mean, beards come and go. But I guess my first thought was Xabi Alonso. He had a very nice beard during his time at Bayern Munich, and I think he still has it now, actually.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout, actually. He did have a nice beard. Not always known for the beard, but when he brought it out, it worked for him.
It was a very classy beard.
Yeah, indeed. How about you, John? Who's your favourite bearded footballer?
I've thought a lot, and I was thinking of people like James Wazalowski. Is that how you say his name?
Oh, the
Like
Leicester.
Yeah, that crazy geezer. He looked like he had a UFC kind of face, just battered and tall, and he had the beard to go with it as well. But to be honest, it has to be Pirlo, because
Yeah.
Did he have a beard? Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he had a beard.
Yeah, he definitely had a beard. Yeah.
He was one classy guy that made that beard work. But what about you, Kai? Anyone else to add to the mix?
I'm loving these names. I kind of like the Alonso one because even though he wasn't a redhead, it would kind of come out in his beard. So I have to empathize with that. Otherwise, John, how have you call him James? His name is Marcin Wazalowski. You just called him James. Right? Back to beards. I would go with someone like maybe Mile Jedinak, who looked like something straight out of 300. Or back in the day, Djibril Cissé used to like dye his beard and put cool patterns in it. So those would be my guys. I don't know if any of you saw Adam Clayton when he played for Huddersfield. Had quite a kind of like Braveheart type beard, and he dyed it blue and white in the Huddersfield colours. But moving away from bearded footballers to a few more personal questions for you, Luke, about your scouting work. And you've held a couple of roles so far in your career. First at non-league club Fylde, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and then currently you're a scout for Cheltenham Town in League Two. So it's one thing for young players to establish themselves in the game, and that's something that you sort of actively play a role in fact. But I'm sure that it's the same as far as upcoming scouts too, when it comes to establishing themselves. So how did you turn a passion for football into a profession in scouting? And then also, what obstacles have you faced along the way as somebody starting out so early in the scouting game from such a relatively young age?
Yeah, like a lot of other people, I started off writing online. I was really interested in football. I wouldn't say I had that much like in-depth knowledge of it. And then, I was at school, I was always quite good at maths. So it was always like a logical step that the idea of trying to explain the game through numbers and data always was like really interesting for me. So that's how I really started, just getting involved through that and writing online, getting involved in Twitter, which I've since become addicted to. And then from there, I sort of moved away from the data side because you sort of get to the point where you're either a football guy or you're actually just a statistician, and that's not what I wanted to do. And then, from there, it's a really saturated market, like, because there's such low barriers to entry. Anyone can be a scout, anyone can sit. Like, people ask me, like, well, what do I need to do? Like, what software do you use? I was like, well, you need to watch a match and have a pen and paper. Like, it's a fairly simplistic thing to do at the end of the day. But really, it's just about getting contacts at clubs, getting as much experience as possible, and everyone has to work for free at the start. That's just the way the scouting world works, really.
So, did you go from kind of grassroots football up? Because I know obviously modern scouting is almost completely different to the old school way of doing things. How would you give advice to young people who are trying to get into scouting, literally with no experience? Do they literally have to go to like Hackney Marshes, or is it more complicated than that, or is it just all about networking and just showing up and showing your face?
It's definitely a mix of both. I think I always say, I get a lot of people message me on Twitter asking how to get involved in scouting and coaching. My biggest thing is always networking is always going to help you. Getting any sort of role in football is going to be based on who you know. And I think a lot of people, obviously people watch Premier League, Champions League, and that's where they want to sort of start. And obviously that's great for practice and having a good knowledge of the game, but it's not really going to help you overall. So when I started out, I'm a Cheltenham Town fan as well. It's my hometown, which obviously who I work for as well now. But I started off going to games probably 2014, I think it was. So I would go to them every week. So I had a decent knowledge of League Two, and also just went to non-league games. And it got to the point where I would literally just put in big scouting group chats, which are really useful. I'd say, you send a photo of the team sheet, say this is the game I'm at, and I might get a message from one or two clubs. It could be clubs like Crawley, Exeter would reply and say, can you just let me know how this player does? And maybe you write a couple of sentences, maybe you send like a 2-page report, but then you get feedback on that and you just build from there. And it's just like getting that experience. And so that's how I started really being like a freelance and just getting any work I possibly could.
Wow.
No, that's very interesting. Sounds like you did some stuff for Exeter. I'm a bit of a fan of theirs as well. Hopefully you sent some good players their way. But aside from the scouting you're doing for Cheltenham, your hometown club, you're also, as I mentioned earlier, regularly writing for Target Scouting, and you're speaking on the Anti-Football podcast as well. So what do you enjoy the most about each of these projects? And also, is there one that you ultimately prefer over the other?
Target Scouting was, we started last April, so right at the start of lockdown, and sort of our lockdown project, and it's gone a bit quiet in the last month or so, but so we sort of put pause on that a bit because me and Tom, who run it together, we're really busy with uni work, and he's about to go move to Spain for his year abroad for university. So it's just not that ideal for us as now, whereas during lockdown, it was really easy to produce loads of content. Target Scouting I really love because it's an idea I've found for a while. Target Scouting is a great place to basically just collate, and I think of it as like a database basically of all the young players across Europe and South America to an extent. And the ideal plan for it was to, in the long term, be like the go-to place. If your club is linked to some player from Belgium or Denmark, Norway that you probably haven't heard of or ever seen, maybe you just know him from Football Manager, then you can go to Target Scouting and see maybe 2 reports, could be something really in-depth, could be like 3 or 4 short things. And then Anti-Football is only a couple of weeks old. It's me and Tom, same guy from Target Scouting, we do the podcast together. It's a Spurs and Newcastle podcast, which we're really enjoying doing at the moment. It's just me and Tom spend all our time talking about football anyway, so it's just sort of made sense. Really is the next step.
I mean, coming from the 3 of us who are all on a football podcast, we totally get, speaking about football is a big thing. But It's time for a game now, and the game we're going to play is called Haway Which Lads. So essentially, I'm going to give you, I'm going to ask you to guess the starting lineup from 2 games from the past, and the 3 of you will kind of get to do it together. And as it's the FA Cup 4th round this weekend, at the time of recording, I thought I'd dig up some old 4th round matches. So this year, actually, Spurs are playing Wycombe in the 4th round of the Cup. But back in 2017, Spurs also played Wycombe in the 4th round of the Cup. So what I would like the 3 of you to do is to name me the starting lineup from Spurs when they played Wycombe back in January 2017.
Start with the goalie, I guess, but it wasn't Lloris in goal?
It was not Lloris in goal, no.
Okay. Gazaniga probably wasn't there yet.
It was Michel Vorm.
It was Michel Vorm, John, correct.
Nice. Okay. All right. Up front was back in 2017. Was Harry Kane playing?
He didn't start by the looks of things.
Victor Janssen, would he be there by now?
He was, but also actually, even in this game, he doesn't seem to have made the cut to start, sadly.
Okay. Llorente's not there. Who the hell was playing up front? Okay.
Well, you'll know who's up front. It might not be obvious right now, but feel free to, discuss other positions or work them out.
I want to throw 2 names out real quick. I don't know if either of them were still playing for Tottenham, but George Nkudu and Clinton Ng.
So Nkudu was starting, so well done on that. I think Ng might have even been loaned out by this point, but you've got Nkudu. Well done.
All right. Borman and
right. This is a shout, okay? Josh Onoma.
And it's such a good shout, John, because he was playing. He started.
Hey, what position?
It looks like he was playing just off the striker, sort of attacking mid role, but actually he didn't seem to do that much. So who knows?
Was Eric Dyer playing?
He was. So that's another one.
Was Eric Lamela playing?
He wasn't. It feels like the sort of game he should have been, but he certainly wasn't starting.
Definitely does.
Okay. Harry Winks?
Yeah, Winksy was starting at centre mid.
It was either Moussa Dembele or Mohamed Sissoko playing. Sorry, Moussa Sissoko.
Yeah, Moussa Sissoko was playing, although by the looks of BBC, Moussa was playing sort of as a right mid.
Danny Rose playing?
Nope, he wasn't playing.
Ben Davies must have been the left back.
Yeah, Ben Davies was playing. Nice one. Keep going. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 to get.
Okay.
Was Kieran Trippier playing at right back?
Yep, he was. So you've got the fullbacks. So you just need the 2 centre backs and then the striker.
Was Dyer not playing at centre back?
Dyer was the centre mid. So,
okay.
Yeah, Dyer and Winks was at centre mid.
Okay.
So I'm just looking for the guy who played up front on the day, and then the 2 centre backs. What I'll say is, both the centre backs aren't playing for Tottenham at the moment.
Vertonghen.
Nope.
Surely. Not really.
No. It's more rogue than Vertonghen.
Foyth was there, or he wasn't there?
No, this is pre-Juan Foyth days.
I think we might need some clues.
So we've got so we'll go with the striker first. The striker, apart from Harry Kane, is one of the best players in the Premier League.
Heung-min Son.
There you go. So that's the more easy one. Now the 2 centre backs.
Is Chiriche's one? Is Chiriche's one?
No, he'd gone by this point. So we've got 1 Austrian centre half.
Oh,
and then
Kevin Wimmer.
There we go. Son Heung-min's best friend, Kevin Wimmer. And then finally, we have an American guy playing alongside him in one of his few appearances.
Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Hallelujah. We got there. It was tough, but we managed it. So, as I said, 4th round FA Cup 2017 for Spurs happened to sort of coincide with this year. And weirdly enough as it is, on the same day Spurs played Wycombe in 2017, Southampton played Arsenal at St Mary's. Tomorrow I think Southampton are playing Arsenal again. So what I'm going to ask for you this time is for you guys to name me Arsenal's starting lineup from when they beat Southampton 5-0 in January 2017.
Do you know what? I was there.
There you go. So you've got to get this right.
I was there with a friend of the podcast, Billy. With Billy.
You spoke about
it
on the
in the FA Cup podcast, and we had quite a few drinks. So
can you? How much can you remember, John? That's the question. Was Ospina in goal?
Yeah, there you go. Ospina was in goal.
I mean, Theo Walcott got the hat trick, so yeah.
Yeah, Walcott's there. Nice one.
Is Rob Holding playing?
He is. So 3 out of 3 so far.
Callum Chambers?
No, he wasn't.
What about Ainsley Maitland-Niles?
Yeah, he was playing in the midfield that day.
Danny Welbeck up front.
Yeah, there you go.
Alexis?
No, Alex was certainly not from the starting lineup.
Okay.
Ooh, how about Coquelin? Was he there?
No, he wasn't.
Is Elneny?
No, again, he wasn't either.
Okay.
Was it a strong squad?
Yeah, it's a.
I mean, you were there, John.
I know. I'm trying to think back. Is it Ramsey? Maybe. Was Ramsey?
No. What I'll say is, you've got Rob Holding. There's 3 defenders left for you to get, and 2 of them are still at the club.
Is
Ellerin?
Polista playing there?
No Polista, I'm afraid, Luke. Did you say Bellerin, Keitel?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was at right back. So that leaves 2 defenders. One is still at the club, albeit he doesn't play much, and the other one left a few years ago.
Mustafi.
Yeah, so Mustafi, that was the centre back. So you just need. So you're left with the left back, 2 midfielders, and the striker. 4 people to go.
Is Kieran Gibbs at left back?
Yes, good shout, Luke. He was. So this is when it starts. I think, it starts to get a bit trickier for these final 3. You've got 2 midfielders and 1 striker, and they've all since left Arsenal.
Is Giroud playing up front?
He's not. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Striker.
Who scored? I know it was Walcott 3.
Oh, Lucas Perez?
Yeah, Kai, that's a great shout.
Yeah, gosh.
He can't have started much, but he started this game.
I'm going to demonetize this podcast right now by saying fuck Lucas Perez. But anyway.
Really? He had quite a good record at Arsenal, no? In terms of
he
stats
just doesn't
and
sound like
games
a brilliant guy, to be honest with you. Anyway.
Okay. Lucas Perez aside, we've got 2 more midfielders to get.
Not Elneny.
Jack Wilshere fit for this game?
No. So one of them has won the Premier League in recent years. / last
Alex
year.
Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Yeah, there you go. And then the last one, I'm going to have to help you out a bit because it's probably the roguest guy in the team. He shares something in common with Maitland-Niles and Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Emil Smith-Rowe.
When it comes to his surname.
It's not Smith-Rowe?
No, but you're sort of onto something. No, but you're onto something with double-barreled.
Double-barreled? Oh, what?
Who the hell was that?
Is he English?
No, and he's doing very well, but in another league now.
Is his name Jeff Wren Adelaide?
Yes, Jeff Wren
Adelaide. Oh, wow. What
go on the Jeff. I actually randomly was on his Instagram today.
God,
you know what?
I don't know what he's. I didn't realize he plays for Nice. I thought he was still at Lyon, but he's apparently playing for Nice these days.
I didn't either.
Is very nice.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there we have it. 2 FA Cup games from the past that are due to be taking place over the next few days.
Lovely. Well, we're gonna talk some more about scouting now, but this time a bit more broadly than earlier. So, Luke, I had a first question for you, and it's kind of a logistical one. Essentially, what has to happen within a club between the time a player is identified as a target to scout and the moment that club puts in a transfer bid or a contract offer to the player? Like, what are the steps? Because there's so many people involved, and when you think of scouting, or people who think of scouting as just somebody sort of standing on the sideline of a pitch watching a game, that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? So from A to Z, could you kind of briefly walk us through the process of a signing?
I think there's quite a lot of different things that can happen. It can be you might be just sent to a random game, maybe to watch a single player or just to have a look at the team in general. And then you might see 1 or 2 players you think, they could fit our system and be a good player for our level. And then you would go back and rewatch them, and then the process starts from there. Or it could be they've been flagged up by data and you've watched them, or you could have watched them on video before seeing them live. You get players off by agents all the time. So I occasionally get asked to watch a video or watch someone because we know they're available. Yeah, and as you just build up that general knowledge, and then when you get to the transfer window, then you know what you're looking for, and you can look back at your older reports and sort of find players you've previously liked, and you can sort of go back and watch them. I'm not involved in the final part of the transfer process. I'm just more if we're interested in the player, I get asked for a second opinion, or I might just looking at, like I said, random games, trying to see if there's anyone we could be interested in, or I might do my own individual sort of project, and then I can put forward players that I have watched previously or I'm interested in.
And when you put those players forward, that would be to the chief scout, and that's then his responsibility to take it to the director of football, to the manager, to the coaches, or what's the next step?
So my boss is the recruitment analyst above me, and then it will go from him to the director of football, who's also like the head scout essentially.
And in the sense of, we're all obviously kind of unfortunately aware of, as far as maybe agents, for instance, rogue agents. Are you familiar with, or does it exist in the world of scouts? You've mentioned essentially agents pitching players to scouts, who I assume would then hope that you would write a nice report for their player. Obviously, you know, you're going to be impartial, you'd assume, and you're going to watch the game and sort of tell it as it is. But are you aware of any rogue scouts in the world of football? And if so, does that even work? Is you know, eventually someone's going to see the proof is in the pudding or not. So yeah, does that exist?
The main thing I'd say, the world of football scouting, LinkedIn is a horrible place. You get lots of user people, you get ridiculous amount of people trying to add you and messaging you about random players who like are playing like 6th division in France and trying to get them to move to Cheltenham. And I'm like, you know, you just sent me a CV and if I'm lucky, maybe a transfer market page, but there's no video or anything like that. There's nothing I can do with that. And I'm like, sorry, but there's nothing I can do. And you know, I don't particularly deal with agents too much, but it is useful to find out if a player is available. So if I see someone message, I will tend to just follow up briefly, just to see if there's anything interesting, because I always think you might as well follow the leads there. I got offered a player a couple of days ago, last week, who looks really interesting, quite a unique player who I did quite like. And I followed it up on video and liked the player, but wasn't that convinced. But the way the agent sells him to you, he's telling me how he's got interest from clubs all across England who above our level, how a mid-table League Two club wants to make him their starting right back. And I'm watching him and I'm like, yeah, he's good, but he's probably not the level we're looking for.
And I guess real quick, before I let one of these other guys ask you another question, from your perspective, obviously, I think traditionally people would think of strength, pace, power, technique, and all those kind of attributes to be the standouts when you're kind of observing a player and weighing up their value. Do you have any alternative traits that you kind of read between the lines for, or that you value above what most people might assume?
So the England FA they use the model in coaching and in scouting, the 4-corner model. So you have tactical, technical, psychological, and
Physical, maybe?
Physical, that's the one. So I tend to use that as a general basis. It's always quite useful, but as long as you're covering those 4 corners, you're probably on the right track. You know, I look for certain things in certain players, because you obviously looking at players from the perspective of your system, and sort of the player profile you need. Not every fullback is going to be the same, because you know, Cheltenham use wing backs, for example. So you're always looking at things differently, and you know, I like players with really good mentality. I like players. I'm quite perfectionist about passing technique. If a player has really clean, crisp passing, I like that a lot. If people are really careless with their passing, that will turn me off them quite quickly, for example.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, obviously, you get a lot of highlight reels, and it must be so hard to differentiate from someone who's actually got the minerals to actually hack it in the English league. Because obviously, all the highlights they're not going to show a highlight of them misplacing a pass. For instance, you said you had a French footballer send over his stuff or potentially his highlights. How do you really bury down into do you just look at his stats, or do you just organize a trip over to France and you watch him play, or do you watch a live game? Or
no, for us, that example would be there would be no real chance of following that up at all. Yeah, we could potentially miss out on a great player, but realistically, the odds of that are very slim. And we're not going to trek over to France to have a look. And I don't really look at highlights videos pretty much ever. If I'm looking to a player, because they'll 99% of the time they'll be on Y Scout if we're interested in them. So I'll hop over to that and watch a couple of games or clips, or at least get some sort of idea and have a quick look through their stats and all that.
And just another quick question. I know a few years ago, I think there was a story broke out. I think it was either West Ham or Southampton. They apparently used Football Manager to kind of help get the players. Is this something that happens in the scouting world? Can you confirm it's kind of clubs have actually used it in the past?
Not to my knowledge. I've heard of stats companies using FIFA and Football Manager for pace stats, because obviously that's something hard to quantify necessarily. And you can get a good idea of video or whatever, but it's not always ideal. But if you're looking at just purely data scouting, that's something that doesn't exist. So using FIFA or like Football Manager can be like an okay proxy. Obviously, you're going to follow it up afterwards, but yeah, not usually like a million miles off.
Cool.
Noticed as well, Luke, you are of course in the latest Football Manager game, which must be pretty cool. Have you played a game on Football Manager and sort of signed yourself up to Spurs as a scout, or what have you done with that?
So I haven't really actually played that much Football Manager this year, but it was very exciting to be on the game. And the one save I've done so far is in Norway, and Virtual Me is refusing to move away from Cheltenham. He is very stuck to his roots and is currently refusing to move. So that's been quite frustrating for me. But my friend Tom, he's moved me to Salamanca in Spain, but he's since left. So I'm just rocking about in Spain on my own. Someone messaged me saying they brought me to Leeds, stuff like that. So it is very cool in that respect, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're very jealous of you. But there are a number of up and coming scouts within football, including yourself, of course. But a couple of names that spring to mind are Norwich City's Mariella Nisotaki, if I'm saying that correctly. And then there's recently in the news, there's been the 17-year-old Ashwin Raman, who, despite living in Bangalore in India, works for Dundee United. So those are a couple of examples of individuals. But then when you look at actual recruitment departments, you have ones like Brentford, which obviously have a great reputation. And then, of course, at a high level, Leicester City too, obviously bringing in some fantastic players. So from your perspective, are there any scouts or scouting departments that you particularly admire or sort of strive to be like or even work for one day, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people coming through, and like the barrier entry is so low, and there's so much good work being done on Twitter at the moment, and more people are being hired to clubs. Like sort of Rene Maric, who's the assistant manager at Mönchengladbach, is sort of the keystone example. He's sort of like the football Twitter god in that respect. I wouldn't say there's any one I particularly, like a club I really aspire to move to, would want to work for. But like clubs like Leicester, Norwich, you both mentioned, are both excellent setups, and two of the best scouting departments and analytics departments in general in the country. And I think as long as they're sort of open-minded and progressive thinking, I'm very excited. I would like to get experience really wherever is possible.
Well, before we move on to a little game at the end to wrap things up, I wanted to move over to, I guess, not necessarily like the negative side of scouting, but the sort of more maybe disappointing side of it, which is about talent that isn't necessarily fulfilled. So I'm going to bring up a few high-profile talents who were once touted as Wonderkids, but for one reason or another never reached their full potential. So Luke, I kind of want your opinion on where it might have gone wrong for them. I'll mention the names now, and there's a few of them. If you just want to pick up on a couple, if some of these are from back in the days, they might not be as relevant. The names I've got are Memphis Depay, Adnan Januzaj, Moise Keane, and then some throwbacks would be Bojan Krkic, and for John and I, Nicholas Bentner. Like I said, you don't have to necessarily weigh in on all of those, but if you wanted to maybe give your thoughts on a couple of them where it might have gone wrong, in your opinion.
For me, like development of players, like it isn't like guaranteed. People sort of act like, these Football Manager Wonderkids, and if you go on Football Manager, they're going to reach that potential. That's not always the case. Like injuries and so many factors can get involved in that. And I think Depay is probably a good example because he has progressed and now he's a very good player still. But he at the time he did fail to live up to high expectations all the time. But I think where you transfer to and which club you are at is so important. I think people underestimate how a player can thrive in one environment and then another one completely struggling. And that could be just because of the environment. culturally, in terms of moving to a new country, living on their own for the first time, having a group of players who maybe don't aid in their development the same way as the old club did, not getting on with coaches as well, just different training style, philosophy. There's so many factors involved that just because you thrive in one place doesn't mean that's necessarily going to carry over to another. And I think, Depay was excellent when he was originally in Holland, and then moved to Manchester United is, a massive profile move. And it's difficult to live up to that level of expectation. I think Manchester United fans particularly are guilty of being particularly harsh on players. And I often think that it isn't a great destination for younger players because of the backlash you can get so easily. But I think that's the same for most big clubs. But I think as well, players can look great at younger levels when they're breaking through, especially if they're particularly athletic. But if it can catch up with you quickly, if you use a yard of pace, injuries can impact you, and just you can break through. Like Jan Hazard had to break through really quickly, and was excellent in those first few games. But I never really looked at him and thought he was that excellent. He was good, obviously, but people were acting as if he was going to be the next Messi just because he scored a few goals, and there's an element of luck in that and momentum, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to carry on through your whole career. I mean, obviously he's doing well now and has sort of not met the high expectations he had, but he has done well.
Yeah, he's definitely surpassed the Kiko Machedas of this world at the very least. Before we do jump into that game, I guess I had just one question that sprung to mind for you, Luke, about specialty players, if that means anything to you. I'm kind of talking about Adama Traore, maybe someone like a Gylfi Sigurdsson, someone who has just one aspect of their game, pace, set piece delivery, or whatever it is, even Jorginho with his penalty taking. How highly do you value a specialty trait like that? And just how incredible does one aspect of your game have to be for a manager, a scout, whatever, to overlook the weaknesses in the other fundamentals?
My sort of philosophy on this is that, like, in academies, you'll usually tell players that, like, you should have one super strength, something you're incredible at, and then everything else should be you're trying to improve, but it doesn't. It's not going to be as good as your one thing. And you get players who don't. You look at them, and everyone has that one thing they're excellent at. And I've talked about this before. Sort of like, if you look at like Burnley centre halves, you could probably call them world class at heading or blocking the ball. It's such a minor part of the game. But the rest of the game is okay. It's good, but not. It's fairly limited in terms of they're not going to move to a higher club. But I think in terms of like the specialist players, if you can be world class in one, it could be something really small, or it could be something quite significant, like Adama Traore. If you use that correctly in the right profile and the right system, you can be a really effective player. But like I was talking about before, in terms of environment and the right club, if you move to the wrong club or the system changes and you don't no longer fit it, and you're in a really hard place. And I would look at it as for a team, you can probably have one or two, maybe three at a push specialist players. But you really got to build the system around them, and they really need to have that much effect on the team when they're used correctly. Otherwise, you definitely need like a nice mix of well-rounded players. Like I really like Liverpool's midfield, that sort of industrial type, where they can sort of do everything. But a lot of people underrate them just because they aren't that sort of Hollywood name or like Hollywood showcase that you might see from like PSG's midfield or Man City's.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I guess they just bought Thiago, didn't they? He's had a bit of a injury disrupted start, but I know exactly what you mean there. But as I think Keitel alluded to a bit earlier, we've got one sort of game, either or type thing that we're going to end this episode with. And unsurprisingly, it's all about Wonderkids. Or Wonderkids is loose. It's basically an under 23 team we're going to come up with, and you're all going to have a chance to essentially choose your favorite player out of two options for each position. So I'll start. Well, Luke, if you give the answer to the first position, so we're going to start with the goalie, and then John and Kai can follow. But your two choices for the goalie are Athletic Bilbao's Unai Simon or Gianluigi Donnarumma. Who are you going to go with?
I'll go with Donnarumma. I don't watch too many. I don't really analyze goalkeepers very closely, but I've definitely been really keen on him whenever I've seen him.
Fantastic. Okay, so Donnarumma's got one vote. Keitel, who are you going with?
I mean, I've heard good stuff recently about that Unai Simon guy, but his predecessor was Kepa, so maybe not the best shoes to follow in. It's got to be Gigi Donnarumma. I don't think a goalkeeper's ever been this hyped from such a young age.
Yeah, good answer. John, is this gonna be 3 out of 3 for Gianluigi?
It's going to be a full sweep. Yeah, Donnarumma. Like, he was in the first team when he was, what, 16, 17, something ridiculous.
Yeah, something ridiculous like that, yeah.
So, yeah, it's got to be him.
Cool. Okay, well, we'll stick on you, John, for the right back. And there's so many good right backs. I've tried to not go for maybe the most obvious ones, but still very, very good ones. So your choice is between Reece James of Chelsea or Ashraf Hakimi at Inter Milan.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Reece, to be fair, Chelsea haven't been doing well recently, but obviously that's not all Reece James's fault. I think he's such a good talent, Reece James, and I haven't seen much of Hakimi, so I'm going to stick with Reece James.
Okay, Reece James. Luke, how about you? Are you a James fan or you're a Ashraf fan? Or both?
I really like both, and I'm going to be boring and say that like all these decisions would normally depend massively on the system we're playing, but I would probably go for Reece James.
Cool. Okay, nice one. And Kai, it's down to you. Is it a full sweep for Reece James, or does Ashraf get a consolation goal here?
Maybe it's not fair on Reece James that I've seen more of him play. So in that sense, I've seen more of his mistakes, if you get that. But honestly, I have to go for Hakimi. The guy gets up and down the wing like a maniac. And as far as I can tell, his footballing brain is more developed than Reece James, who I think has the physical and technical ability to be one of the best right backs in the world. I just don't know if he's switched on enough. So I'm going to go for Hakimi.
Nice. I reckon I would have gone for him too. So that's 2-2 for that one. But now we're going to do centre back. So instead, well, you basically, Kai, we'll start with you, and I'll give you 4 names, and you pick 2 of them. So I've got Matthijs de Ligt, Wesley Fofana, Alessandro Bastoni, who's doing well at Inter Milan, and then finally Dayo Upamecano, if I've said that right.
That's quite tricky to pick just 2. I think you have to pick de Ligt because he's kind of like that generational talent, kind of how we were talking about Donnarumma earlier. I feel like de Ligt is that centre back. Then I like a bit of balance. I'm tempted to go for Bastoni because I am aware of the fact that he's a left footer from how much FIFA and Football Manager I've played. But maybe Upamecano because he's kind of flavour of the month and looks like he's about to get a big move somewhere. So I'll go for those 2.
Nice. I feel like he's sort of been flavour of the year at Upamecano. I mean, it's only a matter of time before he gets a big move. But John, who are the 2 you're going for out of de Ligt, Fofana, Bastoni, and Upamecano?
I mean, de Ligt is he's just a centre back every club wants. You know what I mean? Like, so passionate and just so he's got everything there. Like bravery. He's also technically good as well. And he looks great next to Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, he's going to dominate European football in terms of centre backs and stuff for a long time. But so yeah, de Ligt, and I'm going to go for Fofana because I saw him play recently and he was very good. And Upamecano, I swear Arsenal have been linked with this Upamecano guy for
we're not going to
years.
We're
never going to get him. We're never going to get him. But yeah, so Wesley Fofana and de Ligt for me.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, Fofana, I've got to say, from what I've seen of him for Leicester, he looks bloody brilliant. But Luke, it's your turn. Who are the 2 you're picking out of those 4 guys?
I'm the same. I'd also go for de Ligt and Fofana. Fofana's stepped up really well and it's been really dominant whenever I've seen him. And then de Ligt is just excellent. And in terms of the other 2, I like Bastoni. I was tempted by him just because he's left-footed. And then Upamecano I like, but I am one of his critics, I'd say.
Interesting. Now it's the turn of the left backs. Luke, we'll start with you, and these are 2 fantastic players, to be honest. Alphonso Davies or Theo Hernandez?
No, the tough one. I haven't seen enough of Theo Hernandez as I would have liked. I think I have to go for Alphonso Davies. He's one of my favourite players at the moment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. We love him on the podcast. Kai, I think I might know your answer, but Davies or Hernandez?
I don't even know if I know my answer. Honestly, like, I'm going to be controversial and say Hernandez just because of the impact that he has on the team versus necessarily maybe the impact that Fonzie Davies has on the team. just because the amount of goals that this left back Hernandez has contributed to AC Milan, who are fighting for Serie A, and between him and Zlatan, they may be two of the major components that allow them to topple Juventus. So I'm going to go for Hernandez, also based off of the fact that he flopped at Real Madrid and has had to salvage his career and is doing that.
Good answer. I wasn't expecting it, but I like the answer. John, Alphonso Davies or Teo Hernandez?
Joe, sign me up to the Alphonso Davies fan club. I love that guy, and I love the content he churns out as well. It's incredible. Luke, is that something you look for in a player as well? Like his TikTok ability?
Not so much at our level. I'm not aware of any of our players on TikTok, but maybe I should check.
You can put that forward to your recruitment analyst boss. We need to start monitoring their TikTok pages. But okay, we've got our defense sort of, but now we're on to the attacking players. So we'll do it a bit quicker now. We'll stay with John. So for right mid, Jadon Sancho or Christian Pulisic?
I'm going to be controversial and go for Pulisic. I think he's a brilliant player. Chelsea having a tough time. I think he just needs that manager to unlock him, really. I think I've seen so many flashes of brilliance from him. I think he just needs a bit more time. So, yeah, I'm going to go for Pulisic.
Nice. Okay, Pulisic. Luke, Sancho or Pulisic?
Again, I really like both, but I'm going to have to go for Sancho. I think he can just do everything. And in my mind, he's going to be like another level at the top, really.
Nice. Fantastic. Okay, Keitel, what about you?
I think, again, I'll maybe be a bit controversial. I'm going to go for Pulisic, the boy from Hershey, just because I think the idea of Pulisic is actually better than Pulisic himself, but the idea of Pulisic is pretty great. So, in theory, he's great. That's my choice.
Cool. Yeah, I obviously don't really want to like him because he's at Chelsea, but when he gets going, he's pretty damn good. Okay, centre midfield time. I've got one CM option, one DM option. We'll start with the CMs. It's a bit of an El Clasico choice here, Kai. Federico Valverde of Real Madrid or Frankie de Jong of Barcelona?
I don't know if I could call de Jong a DM. So if we're going to go on the DM...
This is centre mid.
Oh, this is centre mid.
Yeah.
It's got to be Frankie de Jong because he's bloody underrated and so good, having to step into a Barcelona midfield that is expected to be one of the best midfields ever, and I think he's really good.
Nice. John, what about you? Which one's your man or boy, youngster?
Youngster. It's got to be Frankie. Frankie. He's just an absolute baller, isn't he? So I don't have to. We all know he's a baller. So yeah.
Yeah. And Luke, what about you?
I'm also de Jong. I think he's sort of gone out of the spotlight a bit in the recent, this season and last season. But he is exceptional, one of my favorite players. But I would put him in the defensive midfield category to disagree with them.
Nice. I'm going off. I think it's transfer markets rating, so we'll have to take it up with them. But for the Luke, we'll stay with you for the defensive midfielder position. It's the battle of two Premier League players. So Declan Rice of West Ham or one of the Portuguese contingent at Wolves in Ruben Neves?
Oh, this is easily Rice. I'm a huge fan of him, and I'm a bit sceptical of Neves.
Fair enough. Keitel, who are you going to go for?
Also Declan Rice. I see a lot of negative stuff written and said about him. Every time I've seen him play, he gives 110% and is the best player on the pitch typically. Neves is one of those guys who, from Football Manager, is in theory supposed to become the next best defensive midfielder in the world. And all I've seen is him score some bangers, which is very impressive, but I have no idea what type of defensive midfielder he is. So I'm going to go for Declan Rice.
Nice one. John, are we going to get any Ruben Neves love from you?
None at all. Decker's Rice all the way. What a baller. And if he could just quieten down and stop shouting about that friendship with Mason Mount, I think it will put his standing a lot higher with me. But he is an absolute baller. And I would love to see him at Arsenal one day. But yeah, good friends with Mason Mount. Apparently, not a lot of people know.
I think that's probably why I don't like him. I probably don't rate him because he's friends with Mason Mount. But yeah, I'm also probably the Ruben Neves bangers probably make me biased towards him. But left midfielder, it's another battle of El Clasico. John, we'll stay with you. Are we going to go with Ansu Fati or Vinicius?
Oh, it's tough, but I'm going to go with... Do you know what? I'm going to go with Vinicius. I'm gonna go Vinicius. Yeah.
Okay. Benzema badmouthed him fairly recently, I think, but he gets your vote. Luke,
Gets my vote.
Yeah, Luke, who are you going to go with?
I haven't watched either enough, but I'll go for Fatty, mainly because Benzema is one of my favorite players, and if he doesn't like Vinicius, neither do I.
Nice one. How about you, Kai? Who's your vote for?
Ansu Fati is my vote. Vinicius, I don't know what he's all about, but Fati's going to be quality. Mark my words. Mark my words.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kai. I love Ansu Fati. He looks incredible. Okay, so we'll stay with you, Kai. Again, a bit like the centre-back situation. I'll give you 4 sort of strikers, a mixture of maybe centre forwards and sort of second strikers, and you can give me 2 of them. So I want out of Kylian Mbappe, yeah, he probably will be picked, Lautaro Martinez, Erling Haaland, and then Atletico Madrid's João Felix.
All right. Well, who was that? Lautaro Martinez can just leave this conversation as far as I'm concerned. No, I mean, he's a brilliant player, but Haaland, yes. Although I guess, yeah, I'm going to choose Haaland before I choose Mbappe. So the second one's just for the sake of balance. And I think given that I would have to choose Mbappe, but João Felix is a player who I like a lot, and I'm excited to see the trajectory that his career takes. But Haaland and Mbappe.
Cool. John, does Felix or even Lautaro Martinez sneak into your 2, or are you going to go with Keitel's?
I mean, I'm very impressed with Martinez and João Felix, but I mean, it's got to be Mbappe and Haaland. You can't. I mean, both incredible strikers at such a young age. So yeah, those 2.
Yeah, no, they are pretty incredible. And then we'll end it with our guest today, Luke. Who are your 2?
I'm torn. I think I'm going to go for Haaland and João Felix. I really don't want to leave Mbappe out, but I don't think him and Haaland, I wouldn't put them both in the team. So João Felix was sort of my definite, and then it was between the other 2, and I feel like Haaland would do better.
Brilliant. I mean, yeah, it's been fun discussing all these players. I mean, they're all pretty damn incredible. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how they continue to do. Obviously, some already, like Mbappe, have done a lot. Others we're yet to see too much from. But yeah, exciting times for all of them.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I mean, we didn't necessarily come up with one definitive starting 11, but if you sort of aggregated our picks, it would be interesting to see how that team did in a top flight or in a Champions League competition, because pretty damn good. But anyway, like I mentioned earlier, that was kind of the wrap up for this episode. I do want to say thanks to my co-host Joe. Thank you to John as well for joining, and then a very special thank you to Luke. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and yeah, we hope that you enjoyed being our guest.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for having me, guys.
Before we do let you go, besides, as Joe mentioned earlier, besides signing you as a scout on Football Manager 2021, how can our listeners best follow you otherwise and keep up to date with Griffin Football, everything that's going on with that?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Twitter, which is at Griffin Football spelled FTBL. And then I'm also, my other accounts I use are at Target Scouting _ and the Anti-Football Podcast, which is at _antifootball_.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, Luke. We loved having you as our guest. On our end of things, if you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please do make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at United Mates FP. That's the handle. And then if you'd like to put some faces to the voices, you can find everything on YouTube. Just search for the United Mates Football Podcast and hit that subscribe button. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Goodbye.